Welcome to meditation. And for this meditation, the title is Exploring the Ego. Exploring the Ego. And I think this is a very important topic because ego is a word that we're all quite familiar with. And yet, when you really hone in about what is the ego and what's not the ego, etc., then things get pretty murky, I think, regardless of what you're reading or what philosophy or psychology you're reading. It can get a little bit murky, and this is especially important to clarify because when you're doing meditation, and you're studying meditation and spending time in quietude and self-reflection and personal growth, there you're encountering the idea of ego, and different writers or different teachers will have different slants on the ego. So some teachers will say, you know, the ego's bad, you have to get rid of the ego. Some teachers will talk about the importance of developing a healthy ego, a well-balanced ego. And I know one woman who really refrained from exploring meditation because she had early on heard that through meditation you'll lose your ego. And so her fear was, well, then why should I annihilate myself? You know, my ego is who I am. And so if I meditate, if that's going to get rid of my ego, why would I ever want to do that? And so a lot of confusion can arise about the ego. And I was talking to someone yesterday about it. So it's then this morning when I went to read from one of the books I like to read, I happened to open to the page about the ego. And so the book I'm going to read from is entitled Talks with Ramana Maharshi. Talks with Ramana Maharshi. And he was an Indian teacher who lived in southern India and passed away in 1950. And he lived on a mountain, basically. He lived in two different caves on the mountain. And then for the last 20 or 30 years of his life, he lived at the base of the mountain, and a community or ashram grew up around him. Oh, okay, so the way he looks at it, which I think is very clear way to look at the ego, is that we have the deepest dimension of ourself, our deepest, truest nature, he calls the self with the capital S, self. You could also call that your soul, your spirit. That is your essence, your essence. And then there's the ego. There's the ego. And what he says, he writes, I is the self. So like I, then a hyphen and another I. So he says, I is the self. I am this, or I am that, is the ego. The ego is transitory. When the I is kept up as the I alone, it is the self. When it flies at a tangent and says, I am this or I am that, then it's the ego. And so what I glean from this is that intuitively, we all have a sense of ourself, self-consciousness. We have this deep-rooted feeling that's always there in our waking and in our dreams, that I exist, I am. And so that deepest core feeling, that feeling of existence, that feeling of being, is the self or the spirit, the deepest soul. And that's what you want to connect with in your meditation practice. Our existence is a beautiful, wonderful reality. And so the feeling of I am, I exist, I my being is a beautiful, deep meditative experience, the deepest you can have. Where complexity starts is when we link our sense of self to something or someone. So if now I say, if at one moment I say I am, then there's that deep-rooted sense of being. But then if I expand and I say, okay, I am this job I have. I am, or my sense of worth, or my sense of being is the money I have in the bank, or I am my body. I am my ability to play music. And so if we don't root ourselves in that clear sense of I am, and instead our sense of self is rooted in I'm a musician, I'm a wealthy person, I'm a sad person, I am lonely, I am wonderfully happy because I'm in the perfect relationship. So as soon as we connect our sense of self to this or that, that's when the ego begins. That's the ego. And now we, of course, being in daily life, we have all these connection points because we do play music, we do go to work, we do have a career, we do have friends, we do have relationships. And so to say to someone, well, spirituality is about getting rid of your ego, to a large extent to do that, you would either have to not have all these connection points in life, which is impractical because we live in the modern world. Then the other option is, well, can you be alive and happy and having all your experiences, have those connection points, and yet each day in your meditation root into the feeling that just your pure sense of self, and have that be your ground in life. So you have all these other connection points, you have all these other wonderful things you're connected to, but can you have your sense of self be rooted in the deepest self? So that, because inevitably things are going to come and go. And so if my sense of self is rooted in what a good musician I am, then when I lose my hearing, what happens? Do I become destitute and depressed because I'm not of any significance anymore? Or have I spent my life cultivating deep sense of self? And so if I do lose my hearing, or as I get older, or when I'm looking at death, or when relationships don't work out, do I still have that vibrant, joyous feeling of being? And that's really the goal of the spiritual quest, is to root into that. So again, I'll just read it. I'll read that little passage once more. I guess, again, it's a pretty simple passage, but it's really clear. I is the self. I am this or I am that is the ego. The brightness of the self is always transitory. When the I, the deep sense of self, is kept up as the pure I, that is the self. That is pure being. When it flies off at a tangent and says, I am this, I'm that, that is the ego. And so to really grasp this, again, it's very simple to say, oh, let go of your ego, transcend your ego. Those are easy words. But the reality is to really understand these two dimensions of yourself, what the process is, getting into your breathing, get into that peaceful state of mind, and then observe when you can feel that sense of just being, and then notice when it flies off on a tangent. Oh, you start to get a little anxious because, I am this successful person and yet I'm not doing great at work, or I am this relationship, but I'm feeling insecure because the relationship's faltering. And so just observe when that happens and see if you can reroute yourself in pure sense of self. And so that'll be our meditation technique this morning. Okay. And so let's begin just by sitting up nice and straight. And begin to take some deep inhalations, energizing, feeling your spine lifting and lengthening. On the exhale, releasing, let your jaw relax. Opening, close your eyes a few times. Get the wiggles out of your facial muscles. Again, inhale, deep, energizing inhale. Exhale, releasing. Now notice one of the deepest attachments we have in terms of ego is I am my body. That's also an ego element. I am this body. And so here in the conscious relaxation, we relax our bodies so we have less awareness of it and then see what else we feel. So on the inhale, become aware of the muscles in the forehead and around the eyes. Exhale, letting those muscles release. Inhale, awareness of the muscles in your cheeks and jaw. Exhale, relaxing, releasing. Inhale, feeling your chest expanding, lungs filling, all that air, life force coming into you. On the exhale, feeling a releasing in your chest, but also deep in your heart, emotional release. Bring awareness to your belly as you breathe in, belly goes out. As you exhale, draw your belly in, feeling a sense of personal power, of strength. Now be aware of your entire physical body at the same time. So as you breathe in, feel the energy entering into your lungs, expanding throughout your entire body. As you exhale, feeling a wave of release throughout your entire physical and mental. Now we'll do concentration. Become aware of the feeling of breath moving in and out through your nose. Touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And feel whatever it is that's supporting your body. So focus in on the sense of touch, the support for how you're sitting, breath moving in and out, and tip of the tongue touching the roof of your mouth. Now add in an awareness of any sounds around you or the quietude around you. Try just to enjoy the sounds. Notice when you label them with your mind, and notice the difference when you just enjoy the sensations. Now we'll begin the meditation on self and ego. We're going to begin with the inner repetition of the simple statement, I am. So that core feeling of being, this is the connection into the pure self. So on the inhale, you're inwardly drawing in and repeating I. And on the exhale, feeling am. If you want to link this to a part of your body, you might try your heart center. If that doesn't resonate with you, maybe your navel center or your third eye. Inhale is I, exhale is am. As you're doing this, notice what thoughts arise, because these thoughts are the roots of the ego. So if you'll suddenly think about lunch or you think about work, that's that ego projection that I am what I eat or I am working. So don't deny those things, just acknowledge and feel the difference between the feeling of just the pure I am. So anything your mind drifts to, take that as an ego connection and try and reroute in I am. Now, in addition to repeating I am, you're also more deeply looking for a feeling of self, a feeling of your existence, of your pure being. Whether you're at the store or at home or with friends, all those things, the common element is your feeling of being. So that's what we're trying to connect into as you do this inner repetition, is that feeling of your existence, no matter where you are, who you're with, etc. Pure sense of self. Try and hold on to the sense of self throughout the day is quite challenging once you enter into activity. But close to the self is the feeling of breath that sustains us in the physical world. So now focus in on your breathing and simply repeat, I am my breath. So the inhale now is I am. Exhale is my breath. So root your sense of feeling, sense of self in your breath, because that's always there. You can always turn your awareness to your breath. Now start to bring a little bit of awareness to your physical body, but try to stay rooted in this feeling that you are the breath. You are your breath. Open your eyes just enough to let in some light, but again, rooted in the feeling that I am my breath. So this meditation is a lifelong pursuit. This level of meditation is very deep, feeling your purest, deepest sense of self and trying to distinguish between that and the ego. But the technique we did right there at the end, the identifying with breath, is a really good in-between point, because to identify with our breath is to identify with something that's always there, versus if we identify with a relationship, job, money, status, et cetera, those things shift much more frequently, whereas breath is very steady. And also, it's very obvious when you've lost awareness of your breathing. So when situations become very tense or you feel rushed, etc., and you lose breath awareness, that's a time you can hopefully pause and reflect and catch yourself drifting too far away from your essence. So if I'm feeling real rushed and hurried and I'm not focusing on my breath, well, what am I so attached to that I'm giving my awareness away? Kind of like if you're in a dream and you're in a nightmare, everything's scary and you're uncertain. Well, we can let our lives become like that because we get lost in our mind in all the identifications. And so the breath, I am my breath, is a really good resting point as you go through your day. Okay, well, deep meditation. I really appreciate the suggestion.